You're listening to Payments Innovation, a podcast dedicated to helping business leaders navigate today's global digital economy. Looking to learn about the latest innovations within fintech and payments? You've come to the right place. Let's get into the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Payments Innovation Podcast. This is your host, Kara Hayward, with #Fintech Karaoke, focused on a mini-series around partnerships in the fintech ecosystem space, trying to keep it light and fun. We have with us today Johanna Pugh from Mambu, and she is the GM of North America. We're so excited to have you on the show today.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kara. I'm super excited to be here, too.
Fantastic. So what we'd like to focus on today is Mambu and their journey into North America. And what I'd love to start with, Johanna, is if you could maybe give a quick bio and background on you as well as the company and your role there.
Yeah, no, perfect. Yeah, so I'm a fintech gal. I, straight out of university, started working for a little old company called the US Robotics, and we were throwing out modems way back in the day. So I'm telling my age a little bit there, but I fell in love with fintech in grad school when I was doing an internship with those guys at US Robotics, and I have never looked back. I've always been in fintech, and working from small companies to relatively large companies, international, mostly in the North American market, but recently, in the past 10 years, a lot of international experience as well. And super excited to be back in the North American market and paving the way for modernization in fintech. So.
Fantastic. That's awesome. And we're excited that you're in this space and really paving that way of innovation in North America. So maybe we could actually start with Mambu's journey into North America. So, Mambu, maybe and quickly, if you could talk about what Mambu is and what you guys are trying to solve, but also talking about the fact that you have been a successful fintech in Europe and you're making that kind of break into North America. So I'd love to maybe hear about that journey. Why are you guys deciding to do that? Why now? And talk about the landscape a little bit around that.
Yeah, no, perfect. When you think about Mambu and you think about the name, you're like, where in the world did you guys come up with that name? But it actually means bamboo in Malaysia, in Malay. But what the whole strategy for Mambu is all about has always been to help proliferate and modernize the banking sector across the world, right? To be able to provide for the underbanked, to be able to digitize and go after new markets if we needed to take a look at different ways that we can innovate within the banking sector and really help drive it, not for just us, but our children and our children's children, and how they want to adopt and bank, if you will, from payments to loans to deposits, et cetera. So that's really our cause, and that's what we're all about. We started off out of a 2007, and the founders came up with this brand new technology and a way of presenting it that made for a very modern componentized core banking platform. And we really took off from there across, as you said, Europe and Eastern Europe and the European nations over there, and hit the ground running. And it was really kind of advantageous with the advent of the open banking sectors that PSD2 and those guys kind of infiltrated in Europe, because they needed something that was a lot more agile, a lot more extensible. And the banking organizations really needed a bit of a kind of a technology change there. Because it is 100% native cloud-based and written in the cloud, all of the APIs are extensible, and so it made it real easy for organizations to be able to adopt quickly the open banking processes. From there, we proliferated into the Asia Pacific region quite extensively, and Middle East as well, and are continuing to scale our growth in both of those areas. But we have organizations across all of Asia Pacific, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore. We have a huge office there. And from there, we actually, about 3 years ago, really made a huge push towards Latin America as well. And we've got hundreds of clients across all those different regions. And, as you can imagine, the last hook left is North America. And are the North American banks ready for it? Is North American, are the fintech lenders ready for it? What do they need? What's there? And it kind of came to us that, it is time. And a lot of organizations are looking to adopt new technology, either, replacing what they have today, or even more importantly, if they can't, building a bank or building a marketplace that allows them to build it based on their customers' needs and not necessarily with the technology you grappled with. So that's kind of Mambu's kind of sector and how we got to where we are. And I'm super excited joining right before COVID. I know it's a kind of a tumultuous time to join, but joining right before COVID, really trying to figure out how we can best equip the North American market. And we've gotten a lot of traction. We have quite a few customers. We have about 15 customers in North America already. We have, multiply that times several down in Latin America. We have a huge masthead of organizations that are really interested in modernizing their technology. And so it made perfect sense for us to come in and really relaunch, if you will. We did a soft launch about a year ago. That's where we got those first sets of customers, but really do a launch that's really targeted towards the needs of the organizations. And if we're not a good fit for a partner, then we're not a good fit. But, we believe in partner first and really ensuring that we're addressing the needs of not only the organizations that we work with, help them modernize, but the partner ecosystem out there, we play a huge role in working with them as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. And so you mentioned sort of the last cook, right, with North America. I think a lot of folks can resonate well with that, especially a lot of fintechs, including us at Currency Cloud, kind of last expanding into North America. Can you talk about why that was the last frontier and maybe some of the struggles that you've maybe run into in expanding here, but also the opportunities that you see as well?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, any European company saying they're going to come in and do something in banking in North America, everybody's like, huh, you're right. It's almost like saying, so I'm living in Texas, so I can say this. It's almost like saying, if you're not in Texas and you're not Texas based, I don't want to do business with you. Yeah. So there's a lot of that, but it's not so much anymore. I mean, we've kind of broken through all the different walls of communication, especially after COVID. So there's a lot more kind of open arms extended to try and bring in the new technology. There's still a skepticism, hey, a European company, there's no way you can understand our banking market. I've been in the banking market here in North America for 20 some odd years. I've been at the other end of the fence at other companies where they just said, absolutely not. We're not going to go into North America with this product. It's not fit for purpose, right? But they don't know. We don't know what we don't know, right? What Mambu does know is we do understand banking and we really understand technology. Mm-hmm. And the team that we have in North America that we've put together is an outstanding team that really does understand banking with 20 some odd years of tenure, most of the guys that I'm bringing on board. Yeah. And so that's been a key, just how, you talk euros, we talk dollars, right? Mm-hmm. That's been one little bit of a barrier, but not so much. I mean, there are other folks that are kind of paving that way as well. Mm-hmm. Compliance is always a question. How are you going to maintain compliance? You're European based. We have a compliance officer in North America that will not only ensure that what we have today is compliant, but what we do tomorrow and the years forward, we'll keep that maintenance going. But because of the extensibility of the system, not a lot of the compliance has to be held within that core. Yep. A lot of that compliance is just helping the organizations understand how the partners, say Currency Cloud, and how we connect and where the compliance is associated with that. So those types of challenges, it's just a matter of working with the organizations to help them figure that out. But that's been the biggest kind of hurdle there. The other hurdle is there's so many new fintechs and companies out there. How do you figure out which ones are good and bad and not, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And so that's been a real kind of challenge. I'd like to say 60% of my time has been working with partners just to figure out, where we have good fits, where we can do a better together story, where, we can have a conglomeration of a marketplace. We do a lot with AWS and Microsoft and Google, in conjunction with Currency Cloud and some of our other partners. So it's really, it's been very refreshing because we are 100% partner forward company. There's no way we could do this without partners. So.
That's fantastic. And that's actually a great segue into sort of my next conversation around partnership. And I think that Mambu has done an unbelievable job of building that partner ecosystem and marketplace. And so maybe if you could talk a little bit more about that approach, right? And why you chose to go partner first. Because I think sometimes that's the harder road, right? Because when you're working with so many different partners, doing so many different things with different cultures, different ways of going about doing business, like talk about why you decided to take that approach, and perhaps what makes a good partner, right? And what makes a partner someone that really almost becomes an extension of your own company.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So, Mambu, and maybe it would help if I kind of tell a little bit of a story about how Mambu works, right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because it's a core banking system. But when you think of a core banking system, a lot of folks think, okay, well, it's got everything. It's got your tellers, it's got your FX transactions, it's got, all the things you would need for a bank. Because typically in North America, that's who you're buying from. You're buying a big box, right? Yeah. Whether it's the FIS's, Fiserv's, or Jack Henry's, and it's everything you would need. Well, the way Mambu works is we let you decide what you need. And so having an ecosystem of partners that we've connected with and we've worked with helps us paint a story to those organizations. Okay, you don't have to just use this, payment program. You don't have to just use this, FX transaction component. You can choose whoever you like. It's very composable and component oriented, and because we don't do tellers. We're not a teller system. We're a core, right? We don't do the digital transfer, the digital footprint, mobile apps, omni-channel experience, but we connect to that. Yeah. But you can choose whoever you like. And I'll tell you a little story that kind of lends to that. I was speaking with a gentleman. I think he's been on this is his fourth bank he started and has sold, and he's about to start his fifth bank. And he said, Johanna, this is the first time in my history of creating banks that I really think I can create a bank designed for my customers and not have to create a bank designed based on the technology I have to use. Wow. And so that was just an eye opener for me. And, when we got to talking, he said, I really love this partner. I really like to do this. And I said, okay, well, let's build your ecosystem. And so for me, that's why partners like Currency Cloud are so important, because they help paint the picture for the customer, right? And we take them on the journey together. Mm-hmm. And when you think about what makes a great partner, it's, communications just like this, where we're working together on behalf of modernizing that one customer. Mm-hmm. And it's the success that we build together, we breed together, that, that we're looking for. It's all about the customer, right? And, when we have open-minded, partners, and they believe all about the customer, not about the sale, then that's what truly makes a good partner, when we're like-minded. It also helps, when we do trainings and when we share information with each other relative to market trends we're seeing, when we share information relative to new technology that we're, unveiling, those types of things, and having those types of forums. And I know you and your team, we have one of those once a week, just about.
Yeah, exactly.
Just making sure we're touching each other's pulse points along the way. Yep. And I believe in, healthy, communications and cadence. Communicate. You can't do any better than that. And partners are 100% our business, and in ensuring that customer gets the success that they need.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And I think, you think you're maybe sometimes communicating too much. That doesn't exist, right? It doesn't exist with a partner. And so I know that one thing that's kind of a big piece in North America is sort of this program manager idea, right? Where you control the entire area. And I think you've now explained why you've taken the approach of the more partnership marketplace route, right? Because it's all about what is best for the customer and how do we develop that sort of composable experience. But I think one thing that makes it difficult to take that approach is sometimes the technology, actually, right? And actually doing that many integrations. So maybe I know that you guys are very API kind of open, right? And I think a lot of partners have taken that same approach. Could you maybe just quickly touch on, when you think about new partners that you would work with, are you really trying to gather partners in that space who are similarly structured around like open banking, API based, or are you working with like other partners that might not be there yet? But and I imagine it probably is based on the customer and what their needs are. But maybe you could just touch base on that and why maybe the open structure is a little bit easier or faster to market.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Yeah, so of course, when we look for our technology partners out there, we certainly look for like-mindedness, and part of that like-mindedness is having an open architecture, API driven, API first, if you will. It doesn't make it easier. It definitely makes it easier, and that's our number one, right? But if they're and that's strategic, right? So that's our strategic direction. But you always have the reactive, right? So a customer wants to work with this company, Move.io, and they don't have everything built. It's open source. It's in early days, early stages, right? And so for us, it's helping that customer along the journey, right? So we're going to work with them as they progress, right, in their extensibility. But yeah, so those the strategic nature of it, but you always have the reaction of what the customer needs and what their requirements are. And sometimes we've got a couple of integration points with folks. We haven't officially partnered with them, but we integrated with them. We call them hostile integrations, right? Because we're using technology to screen scrape and drop data in from this archaic technology out there. We don't like to do it, but we do it.
Yeah. Sometimes that's the only way, right?
Right.
Unfortunately, but
exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's great. And so maybe that's an interesting topic too, because I think one thing you mentioned earlier in your intro was talking about the landscape of Europe, right? And a lot of the directives that came from regulation, right? PSD2 and some others. And I think that hasn't happened here yet in North America, which I think contributes to the struggle, but it also contributes to the opportunity. Like if you can break through that, you can kind of do anything. But and maybe talking about, you've had a long career, as you mentioned, in working for large, big corporations that are more well established, some startups, some that are open, some that are more legacy, domestic, international. I would love to maybe just hear your sort of your crystal ball analogy, right, of what you think might be happening in North America. Do you have insight into? Do you think we'll ever create a regulatory structure that's a little bit more open and that kind of creates a little bit more synergy? Or do you think that it will be sort of a race to see who can kind of navigate this first and you'll start to see some consolidation in those fintechs? Because you mentioned there's so many out there. I would love to maybe just kind of hear your 10,000 foot view around that.
Yeah, in my crystal ball, for me, is based on, like you said, the experiences. So what I've seen happen in Europe, and then the pluses and then the declines, right? So you've seen a little bit of that expansion and then retraction. But what you've also seen in Asia Pacific as well, there are tremendous, opportunities for organizations and Latin America to be able to create what that regulatory structure needs to look like. And they're doing it. They're disrupting it, not only from a fintech perspective, but they're disrupting the way they do banking in general, right? They're knocking down laws and they're creating laws that are best for the consumers and the business owners. I'm on a call almost weekly with the regulators, working through, what their opinion is on cryptocurrency, their opinion is on, the fintech organizations, the AWSs and Amazons and others, Google hopping into banking. And I do think we're starting to see a shift in the not only just open banking. And the reason, by the way, open banking is such a big to do in Europe and some of those countries over there is they don't have the infrastructure we have in North America from a data-driven perspective. So they don't have all the data necessary for Equifax, TU, Experian that we have at our fingertips here, the LexisNexis information. They don't have that, right? And so for them, doing a credit check is like going to the neighborhood corner and seeing who's paid his bill at the local grocery store, right?
Yeah.
If that's even possible. And so how do you, so that open banking sector is a patchwork, but it's almost a leapfrog over what we've had here in North America, because what it does is it really gives the customer power, right? Whereas here, the banks have the power, right? And the credit unions hold the data that the banks use. And so it's a different dynamic. I don't know that North America will ever, really accelerate that, but I think that aspects of that will come into fruition in the regulatory infrastructure we have here in North America. I do think that we'll see some changes.
Yeah.
I also think you're going to see a tremendous consolidation across not only the fintechs, but some of the banking sectors. I think you're going to see some of the larger technology companies come to play more, even more so than Google today, in creating banking infrastructures. And I think you'll see those organizations start to they'll start working with the regulators to lessen some of the restrictions that are there. I think some of the needles have changed a little bit there, but I think you'll see some of these large technology companies really starting to move the needle with the regulators. And I think they'll be the forefront of making that happen. Just like we saw, when Walmart started to get into banking and that sort of stuff, I think you'll see, similar type shift with, the Amazons, the Googles, the Microsofts of the world. And even IBM. IBM's doing a good bit of, development in that particular arena as well. I spoke to them last week. So I think that a lot of the larger technology companies will definitely sway. I also think that the small companies that are popping up, with cryptocurrency transactions, with, e-wallets and standalone kind of small business transactions. I think the PPP program with COVID has sent a skyrocket out across all of North America, that these small banks were able to get it done where the larger ones couldn't. And so I think you'll see a lot of uptick and pickup in that particular arena, with On Deck and those guys as well. So I think more to come in that particular area. And I think regulation will definitely change. I also think, and we haven't talked a lot about this, but I also think artificial intelligence is really going to come to play. Saw a show the other day on artificial intelligence, and they had actually taken all of the victims from the war, and they were able to interview them questions and be able to intellectually give an interview back before they died.
I think I saw that. Was it 60 Minutes?
60 Minutes, yes.
Oh my gosh, that was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it.
And so I was the gal watching Jeopardy whenever, Watson was the first predilection of that. And so to me, I find it absolutely fascinating that we can take information and continually learn from it and be able to use that. I think that will be tremendously important. Maybe not immediate, because there's a lot of immediate things that are going on, but I think artificial intelligence will definitely play a huge role in the shift in the makeup of the banking sector. I've seen a lot of it happen. I've worked with several different AI teams before, but I think that will help shape the banking sector as well, financial.
I could definitely see that. And I think it will be interesting. I mean, even I think one great example is Affirm, right? And I mean, there's been plenty of people talk about them, right? But the fact that they're almost able to predict what you want to buy and whether you're going to need it financed before you even are on the website, right? But it is amazing, and the more that they can utilize that AI, the more that experience is going to be customized. And I think you did touch on I think SMBs, right? Some small and medium sized businesses, and I think there's been a lot of change in the consumer space, but it seems as the next wave is that SMB space, and a lot of companies out there trying to focus on that experience. And almost it'll be interesting, and maybe I'd love your input on this, because banking is, and I know a lot of bankers might be mad at me for saying this, but it is somewhat commoditized, right? It's like the services are relatively the same, servicing, and yes, it was customized a bit community, but I think now what we're starting to see is a lot of these, whether they're traditional banks that are just adopting sort of a new strategy, or these challenger banks focused on very, very specific segments. And I'm really curious, because I feel like there's been this shift from like, going from, commoditization with lots of different banking products to, someone opening a wallet, right? Or one card for something specific. But then those companies that started that way are trying to go back to that more broad range of banking services, but usually still with that sort of core base. So I'm curious, do you think where do you think this might end up? Do you think it will become more customized where there's banking as a service for specific use cases? Or do you think that we'll kind of keep having this shift of going from something more specific to a wider range of banking services back again?
I think it's very interesting. I mean, I was back in the day before we even had data available for small businesses, right? So how do you do a loan to a restaurateur? Well, you don't, because you don't have data on them, right? You only know what they do from a consumer perspective.
Yep.
So I was back in the day working with, RMA and those guys creating what's now the Equifax and TU and Experian formalized, kind of a small business scoring algorithm. But, collecting the data just wasn't there. And so that was the first foray, right? So what do we know about these guys, right? What do we want them to be on our books other than just a consumer? Because they're not a huge, large corporate and they're not this. So how do we create something that's going to be a good experience for them? And so they struggled. A lot of organizations struggled with that. There are a lot of good ones that figured it out really quickly. Mm-hmm. And as that kind of evolution, and I'm talking 20 years back, right? So as that evolution has happened, you see pockets of people that have been overlooked because of the empirical algorithms that are there. So you see the female restaurateurs in a certain sector of, New York that are underbanked. They do everything on their phone and they're underbanked, right? Yep. Nobody is really helping them with insurance or with their P&Ls or any of that sort of thing. Because they may not even have a business plan. It might just be a food truck that they're rocking down the road, right? Yep. And so you find those folks who are looking for, I call them needles in a haystack, because it's the folks that need the services you could provide, and they would be a loyal customer forever. Yeah. So you start with, what do you need now? And then as you grow that base, then they need other things, right? So they're going to need not just loans, they're going to need, omni-channel apps, mobile apps that give them access to transfer funds, integration with Square, integration with Raisin, Venmo, whatever, And so as your customers, are proliferating, you as an organization need to proliferate as well. And so I think that's why you see more standardized banking type things added to those type of companies. The challenge is if they don't have a banking license, they got to go get a banking license, and that's a 2-3-year wait, right? If you're a good candidate, right? Yeah. So I think you're going to see maybe an acceleration of net new banking licenses, or you're going to see a consolidation of banks that are going to bring that under their vest, and those will be partners of theirs. And you've seen a lot of that in the market. Yeah. But I firmly believe that small business enterprises, individual enterprises, that to me is the mainstay of how our economy continues to grow. Yeah. And so we have to look for, technology modernization that's going to help them grow. Yep. And they're going to be customers for life. They're not going to swap if they're doing payroll through you and they're doing their banking through you, they're never going to swap. Right.
Yeah. It's a sticky business if you can do it right. Yeah.
If you do it right. And so I think it is an area of growth for most organizations, financial organizations. So I think you'll see more of that. I think you'll see shifts back and forth, specific targeting. The reason that you see these companies jump up and start and target a specific area, like I said, female restaurateurs in a certain area of New York, is because today, sometimes the big banks and the financial institutions can't reach that market. Right? Because they don't have the extensibility with their technology to get there, right? And so I was working with and this is a similar type of scenario, but I was working with some folks in Africa, and they only have a cell phone. There are no banks to walk into, right? In remote areas. And so if they couldn't do it via the cell phone, then we're hosed, right?
Yeah, that's it.
And so it's the same scenario. There's still people that have money in their mattresses, right? Yeah. My grandmother died, and she had thousands of dollars in her mattress and not even know. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. But the underbanked is real.
It's very real. I mean, even here in Austin, where I live, to see that there's an entire plaza still filled with payday loan, places, and because that's the only way to bank a large portion of the population. And so I think that's so important to mention, because I think like there's a lot of focus on a lot of these like kind of shiny new, like, oh, these challenger banks doing XYZ, but like what about that unbanked? What about the underbanked? And where is that focus? And I think that could definitely be a growth area for sure. And creating that experience that will focus on, allowing them to get the services they need to run their businesses, to live their daily life for sure. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. So I guess one last question before we wrap up. So I would love to hear what sort of advice would you give for, in I guess 2 scenarios. So one, a fintech that's trying to kind of, get in, like start something new, right? Like, and they have like really good, technical prowess, and maybe they have some marketing, great marketing ideas, but maybe they haven't really been too much in the banking space before. What sort of advice would you give to a founder like that in terms of getting their business idea off the ground?
Yeah, you better learn banking. Learn it fast, especially in North America.
Yeah.
Go sit down with your friendly banker and have them walk you through the process and where you might fit in that process, and figure out a use case, right? Yeah. So, and when I say by use case, figure out a better together story for that customer, right? If you think customer only and focus on the customer and the customer's customer, then you're going to win every time. Yeah. It's all about really, what are the challenges your customers are having? Okay, how can we help you with that challenge? And then figuring out how your technology might help them do that. Yep. That to me is 100% key. Don't worry about the competition. Don't worry about anything else. Just worry about the customer and the customer's customer, and you'll win every time. And so will they, because it'll be success, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's great. Like learn banking. I think that's so important. And if you can't do it yourself, hire someone who does. Amen. Yeah. But anything else that you'd like to share with our audience today that has been on your mind, or trends you've been seeing in the market or anything like that?
No, I think we covered most of them. For me, I think artificial intelligence, now I'm not the one that's going to go shout from the rooftops, it's coming. But we've seen it, but to me, I find it interesting and intriguing. So I always follow it. I think that's going to be key. And I think that, the regulatory shift, I think you'll see some changes in the regs. And I think, we'll all help influence them. I think that'll happen from the large tech companies, primarily. That's where you see the big shifts. I think that you'll see, like I said, some consolidation, not only in the banking sector, but also in the fintech sector for sure. Yep. I think that the organizations, whether they're banks, financial institutions, or like us, fintech partners, I think that as long as we have the eye on the prize, and the prize is the customer's success and the customers of the customers, their success, that we will continue to proliferate and build modernization for generations to come. And I think that's why we're in business. Mambu, we call ourselves Mambuvians. That's why we're in business. And it's not for any other reason. And for us, it's a customer first, and then, our employees, and then we never worry about our bottom line. Yep. And that's really key for us. So.
That's fantastic. I love that. It's a customer first approach. And I think that's the only way you can do it, right? Otherwise it's not going to be working for anyone. And I also love that you guys have that partner first approach too, where you have that composable banking experience. Well, thank you, Johanna. Thank you so much for spending the time with us today and delighting our listeners with your story and your vision. We're excited to hopefully launch this in a couple of weeks and get your story out. So thanks again.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. And maybe we can do it again in Texas. There you go.
I would love that. That'd be great. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kara.
Currency Cloud is an online payments company that makes international money transfers fast and simple for businesses. We're building a borderless future where international transactions are seamless for a better user experience. Discover the world's most trusted payment platform and our toolkit of developer-friendly APIs at currencycloud.com.
You've been listening to the Payments Innovation Podcast. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe now in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Thanks for listening. Until next time.